Happy politics, and welcome to a special Friday edition of your favorite BC political podcast that happens to be on the Orca. My name is Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of said Orca, and welcome to my living room. I'm joined in a socially distant manner by...
It is Jordan Bateman, VP Communications for the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association, live from monsoony Metrotown. I'm here.
It's monsoony year as well, and I'm almost tempted to show you, but I'm not going to do it because it means breaking apart things that I have set up. But it is just pouring outside.
If you want to see the rain, if you want to see the rain, go on Russell Cate's podcast. We're much too political for
that. We last spoke earlier in the week. We're going to be doing this bi-weekly while we get through this pandemic election, and let's talk about the week that each leader has had up to this point, and they do all have events today. Or actually, that's not true. Sonia Furstenau does not.
Oh, she's got the Joe Biden like lid on her campaign already today.
That's true. They have. I mean, let's start by talking about Sonia Furstenau because the Greens did send her itinerary today, and so she's doing a lot of work at home in Cowichan Valley, and the Greens have two candidates lined up, herself and Adam Olsen. So I suspect that is where a large part of her day is quite rightly being devoted to.
Yes. All you need is two, I guess. This first week of the campaign, I think the winner thus far, the gold medalist among leaders, has got to be Sonia Furstenau. Now, part of that is expectations. You're a leader for a party for 8 days. You've spent the past year being subtly and then belligerently belittled by the former leader of the Green Party. Expectations were pretty darn low, I think, for Sonia Furstenau coming in this campaign, but she has leapt over that bar and is off to the races here early. So let's recap her week. There's an election call. She goes toe-to-toe with Horgan, points out that he lied he didn't tell her on the Friday before the election that the election was coming, that he tore up an agreement, that he lied. He lied to the Greens about this. Constantly, every time Horgan grapples for a new reason why he called this election, Sonia Furstenau is there to smack that down with a litany of tweets and public appearances and proof, evidence, actual government news releases countering the NDP leader's narrative. At one point this week, I tweeted out that Horgan was desperate to change the channel. Sonia Furstenau walked over, wrestled the remote control away from him, and threw it into Shawnigan Lake. She is certainly overperforming right now. And I, for one, enjoy every moment of it. I love this narrative. For those of us who know, who have watched John Horgan's political career, we know he's not been the paragon of integrity and virtue that, certainly he's painted himself the past 3 years. There's lots there, and Sonia Furstenau is doing a good job of exposing it.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out that the day the election was called, just this Monday, feels like weeks ago now, was her 7th day on the job as the leader. My God. One of the things I tweeted this week is that from the Greens' point of view, if you put yourself in your head for a minute, this must feel an awful lot like a sneak attack, like a week after being told that, well, we're probably not going, we're focused solely on governance and that kind of thing. And it sounds like they were telling the Greens much the same thing behind the scenes. The other thing that was interesting was Furstenau didn't get a heads up. She wasn't even given the courtesy of, hearing it from the NDP. I asked her that question on Monday or Tuesday, and she said, yeah, no, we found out the same way you guys did on Twitter. I got a message from someone in the NDP saying, well, that's actually not true. They got a phone call. So, oh, okay. Well, let me look into this because, that's what she said. So I contacted the Greens and they said, yeah, they called, but after it was public. So, I don't think that counts as a heads up.
Yeah, no. And look, it's another lie, right? Like this is really amazing. Childcare, for example, an issue near and dear to many of our hearts. My kid's 10, my youngest is 10, so we've kind of aged out of that childcare realm. But for us, for a lot of years, this was a primary concern, thing that we had to deal with professionally, both my wife and I, and from a family structure point of view. Childcare, I think by any objective measure, the NDP have failed at what they'd promised. They promised $10 a day childcare. There's a couple pilot projects, but nothing substantive. They promised thousands and thousands of spaces. I think they're at less than 10 or 15% of those spaces have actually been created. And Horgan said, well, this is another reason why we had to have this election. The Greens were holding us back from $10 a day childcare. They didn't support it, and they were dragging it, and we couldn't get it done. The problem is there is this lengthy list of tweets and news releases over the past 3 years where Katrina Chen, the Minister for Childcare for John Horgan, and Sonia Furstenau are having this wonderful love-in about how great Sonia's been on this file. Appreciate all your help, Sonia. You couldn't have done this without you, Sonia. We're working together. There's lots of problems with partisan politics, but not with Sonia and me. We're working together on childcare. So, it's more bullshit. It is more... it's not even spin, because it's worse than spin. Spin is spin, right? Like, we have a podcast on the Orca called Unspun. Like, I get spin, I get unspinning. This is just outright fibbing, lying, misleading people. And, Sonia Furstenau's not having any of it. Another great day for her on the front pages of the newspapers here. I'm walking through the ICBA kitchen. The three papers are laying there. The Globe, the Sun, and the Province. I forget which one had really nice photo of Sonia across the entire fold. Basically with the other one had like quotes from her and Wilkinson on integrity, as far the NDP's lack of integrity, and the line from Sonia Furstenau yesterday. Look, both John Horgan and I studied history, but only he's interested in rewriting it. Great line, pithy,
snappy.
And when we launched this, when we talked about this on election launch day, Maclean, I said that Sonia had an advantage here because she's done principled outrage before. Like, she came into politics because of Shawinigan Lake, and that was a years-long campaign against a BC Liberal, couple of the ministers of environment, trying to get stuff done in Shawinigan Lake, trying to get some, what she sees as contaminated site cleaned up. The NDP, by the way, just continued on the BC Liberal policies on that, did absolutely nothing different, which tells you that probably the provincial government was at the height of its powers as far as what it could do there, and even under the previous environment ministers. And in fact, my understanding is Furstenau has made up with the environment minister she used to torture, Mary Polak, and they actually have a very strong working relationship from their time together in the House. So all that to say, she's done this before. She knows how to walk the line between outrage and anger. She knows how to look aggrieved without looking like a victim. This is going to be tough for Horgan. Like, I just think of the inevitable debate. And, she's going to be there looking very different from Andrew and very different from Horgan. And she'll be able to say, well, guys, like, Mr. Horgan, that is untrue. And she's quick enough and she's on top of these files enough. In fact, I think on some of these files, she's got a better command of the details than Horgan does. Probably because as part of CASA, she had to be on so many bloody committees, and she had to be involved in all of the negotiations behind the scenes on these bills. So she probably does have a better command of it than the Premier, simply because she had to be in there in the nitty gritty, and he just kind of showed up and smiled at various press conferences while the ministers rolled out the plan.
Well, let's talk about the crux there, which is that the different reasons given for why we're having this election. Yeah. And we talked about this before in a hypothetical sense. If they were to go to an election, this was weeks ago we had this conversation where the problem the NDP is going to have is everyone knows the real reason, and it won't be the reason they can give, because they can't just say, because we think we can win. If the NDP were going to get away with this, they need to have a consistent, plausible, simple reason. And it can be anything. It can be, well, we're doing it because of X, Y, and Z. But they have to keep saying X, Y, Z, no matter what that is. And that's exactly what Horgan did not do this week. Nope. Every day was a slightly different thing that the Greens either did or did not do. It was introducing bill amendments. It was the mental health bill. It was
childcare.
Childcare. Every day it's like, really? And,
it was our economic plan.
And the problem is if you keep giving different answers, reporters are going to keep asking the same question. That's just basic. I mean, this is not something that they need a high-level Warren Kinsella-type operative to tell them, and this is not a secret. This is why I'm kind of surprised. Like, you would think that these are smart people. They would say, look, this is going to be a problem. We're coming out with something that everyone, at the very least, doesn't believe. We need to say the same thing every single day, and they just manifestly have not done that. And I'm still kind of confused. And you can tell they're getting frustrated because they keep saying, well, why won't the media talk about the issues?
Yeah.
Well, the Greens
integrity
and Liberals
is the
don't have
issue.
platforms yet.
Yeah. And integrity is the issue.
Yes, it's trust. That's a big one.
So you can come out, like the NDP can come out with any promise they want right now. We are going to cure COVID in the next 3 weeks. And they may actually have a sign that's there and prove it. But we're all going to be like, well, how can we trust you on that? You broke your word. You lied on this, this, and this. And so this is now the underpinning of the campaign. That's why I was laughing at some of the polls that came out this week, because the NDP poll, swung, went out there and said, look, we still have this 8-point lead in this one, and I think 12 in the other, and we're riding high. Guys, that lead's been cut in half in 3 days. Like, you were up 25 in the summer, and now you're up in the best poll for you 10 or 12. Okay, that's been cut in half. And integrity is one of those issues that takes a while to bake in people's minds. But what John Horgan's done is he's opened the door to doubt in a lot of voters' minds who were previously slam dunk NDP voters. Like, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Like, people's spidey sense tingles. And I can tell you that, you're seeing the mainstream media, but you're also seeing it, on Facebook, which is where, a lot of these real people live as far as getting their news goes. Here's what I think is happening with Horgan. I watched Neetu Garcha on Global Morning TV this morning. 7-minute interview with Horgan. Horgan looked defensive. He didn't get angry, but he was definitely defensive. Looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Looked like a guy who'd gotten up really early in the morning to do an interview on Global. I've been there. I hated doing interviews first thing in the morning before my first cup of coffee. They never, ever, I was never as articulate as I was at 9:30 a.m., although this podcast may prove otherwise. So, I get it. But he was not good, and he didn't have a valid reason. And Neetu is many things, but she's not like Chris Wallace. Like, she's not like hardcore slice nine. She asked tough questions, correct questions, pointed questions, but she wasn't being antagonistic by any stretch of the imagination. And he couldn't do it. And I think, Maclean, I would submit to you that the past 3 years have been such a honeymoon for Horgan, even with the press gallery a little bit. The press gallery was so relieved to be able to talk to someone other than, the Rich Colemans, Shirley Bonds, the ministers that they've been covering for 15, 16 years, that a lot of things were kind of given a pass. And there was this kind of sense, we're going to do politics differently with the Greens, and seemed to be working. And then they had scandals with Daryl Plecas, but hey, they could interview Plecas, they didn't have to interview Horgan. They could interview, it was not the same kind of scrutiny that Campbell or Clark ever got. And Horgan, I think, is rusty. His messaging isn't sharp. He's made blunders. You wrote a piece about some of the blunders he made this summer. He's rusty, he's defensive, and in his heart of hearts, he knows that he's lying to people about why he's called this election, and he knows he's lying to people about when he decided to go. I am 100% now in the camp that John Horgan decided to call this election back in August when he saw the first poll of a 25-point lead. Because I look now at how they spent their money on Facebook. This great piece by Penny Daflos over at CTV Vancouver. That's the kind of journalism that I find very interesting. There was these pre-done campaign videos, including one where he's very clearly filmed in the smoke, which means it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, he's been playing this for a long time. He was going to go no matter what. I used to think he was trying to hold back the Bob Doers of the world. No, I now believe he was ready to go and was just looking for a reason. And I think he was ready to go when that first poll came out. Like, I think he would have pulled the plug right then and there if he could have in any possible way. So, yeah, so if that's inside your heart, if that's the truth and you know it, if that's in your conscience, you'd have to be a psychopath to be able to stand up in front of people, or a sociopath and be able to lie boldly and pretend that it's not the case and look convincing. So to Horgan's credit, I don't think he's a sociopath because he doesn't look convincing in the lie. Like he looks uncomfortable, he looks defensive, he looks like he's trying to find it, find a way to spin a truth that is very unflattering to him and very unflattering to the kind of politics he said that he was going to practice. Hypocrisy in politics is the number one killer of politicians. Like this is how politicians, no one's walking into that ballot box to elect Andrew Wilkinson or Sonny Furstenau. It's always a referendum on the incumbent. And here's an incumbent who was cruising to victory based on his COVID handling. Probably could have waited a year, even with bumps and second waves and economic issues. Probably could have, hung on for that long because BCers really wanted to rally behind the cause. Well, that's gone now, and the integrity door is open, and now people are going to start pulling stars and being like, whoa, hold up. You said you were going to build 40,000 suites of housing, but you've built less than 4,000, and half of those were done by the BC Liberals. Whoa. You promised my kid, the renter, a $400 a year subsidy, but that fell by the wayside. You're blaming the Greens. Well, you could have just put it in the budget, and the Greens would have supported it. So what's really going on? This is a big problem for John Horgan, and it's going to be one that's going to go on for, well, it's already gone on for more than the 2 days that the media thought it would.
Yeah, well, no, and part of the problem was because everyone was speculating on election for, a week, 2 weeks before it actually happened. It was already a 2-week story.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't the kind of thing that was going to go away in 2 days, but I don't know. Hey, let's talk about the interesting thing that happened this week. There was an endorsement of sorts. It's not a big surprise, I don't think, if you're watching BC politics closely or have the last few years. Former Green Party leader and member and co-signer of CASA, Andrew Weaver, has explicitly endorsed his friend, John Horgan. And they are good friends. I don't think that's unfair to point out.
Well, look, Dr. Weaver has he's now retiring from politics, but on his way out the door, why don't I take one last kick at the cat? Listen, smart guy, never really understood his politics. Certainly not a team builder, given the fact that he's now turned his back on 2/3 of his caucus, and doesn't seem to be any rush to build statues of Andrew Weaver by the Green Party anywhere. I would submit that he has a speckled past when it comes to women in leadership. Very vociferous critic of Elizabeth May. Now, who isn't? Many of us are, but very, very much a vicious critic of Elizabeth May. Clearly didn't like Sonia Furstenau. Had some issues at the legislature with ranting around female staff. So there was all these things kind of going on. I just think Horgan's kind of like him. Like, they like rugby. They kind of, I don't know, it's weird, right? Because Weaver's an academic, and Horgan would be the first one to tell you he's not. But like when the nerdy kid gets in with the cool jock, and you feel like, and so you're like the nerdy psychic. Maclean and I both played one very specific part of this partnership, the nerdy sidekicks. But like
the Robin and Robin podcast.
Exactly. So I think maybe that's part of it. Like he really liked that. But look, Andrew Weaver's name is mud in the Green Party now. I don't think he carries any weight in that party, especially among the workers, because all he's done is undermine them for the past year. And yeah, it's a one-day story. I actually don't think it helps at all. Like, I'm not sure it helps Horgan much. It's so interesting to me, like this war between the Greens and the NDP has turned in a way that I didn't really expect. But man, it is good news for the BC Liberals, because there are very few ridings where all three parties are competitive at once. But the NDP have to fight this two-front war. Basically, on Vancouver Island, they got to fight the Green Party, with the exception of maybe Oak Bay Gordon Head and obviously Michelle Stillwell's riding, and maybe Courtney Comox. That could go either way. Maybe Adam Olson's could go any one of three ways too. But generally, the fight on Vancouver Island is Greens NDP. And then that spills over a little bit into the very urban areas of Vancouver, although not much. They don't have any candidates yet, the Greens. But the rest of the province are fighting the BC Liberals. And those are two very different fights. And that is a systemic advantage, I think, for the BC Liberals, who, already had a plurality of seats without, the need to win on Vancouver Island much. It's another reason why this week has been so fascinating to watch this disintegration between Horgan and the Greens.
Yeah, and the part that I find interesting is that the argument you keep hearing over and over again on Twitter from the usual suspects is that, well, Weaver signed CASA. He understands the spirit and intent. And if he's saying it's fine to break it, then who are we to argue? I don't understand this justification at all. CASA is public.
Yeah.
has been since the day it was presented to the lieutenant governor. It says what it says. And it explicitly says they will not do what they're doing. I mean, unless they're implying that there is an unspoken secret version that we've never heard or are privy to, that the Horgan and Weaver had a wink wink thing, which wouldn't be a good justification, by the way, but this notion that only Weaver and Horgan signed it, which is what they keep implying, which is also not true. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're the two leaders at the time, but also that the spirit, which you can read, I guess, overrides the explicit instructions and commitments included, is just, it's a terribly self-defeating argument. It meant like, look, we always meant to break it. You're a fool if you thought otherwise. Really? That's your justification? I don't get that at all.
Yeah, well, it's another lie. I mean, that's the truth. It's a lie. Like, they all signed it. They reinforced it when Weaver resigned as leader. They reinforced it during their leadership race. And Furstenau walked in with a letter that she's given to the media from 3 days before the election saying, we are still committed to CASA 100%. The terms still stand. There's no change. We will govern with you. We will support your government right through October 2021. And it's not like, so they can spin it however they want, right? And this is the problem for the NDP, is they're stuck in that quicksand. They can't get out of it, and they don't deserve to get out of it. They sprung this trap on these parties. It really bothers me that in a global pandemic where we actually saw politicians doing the right thing in British Columbia, laying down the partisan swords, laying down personal agendas, laying down political agendas, and just rallying around the fact that, look, we got to mask up, we got to do what it takes, we got to reduce our circles, we got to shutter businesses, we got to do whatever it takes to get our people through this pandemic, as many of them safe, healthy as possible, and with as much economic, they did the right thing. The Liberals did the right thing. Andrew Wilkinson, I think we talked about this last time, he could have done the Rachel Notley thing in Alberta and fought the government on everything, right down to handing out masks at drive-thrus. But he didn't. Yeah. He said, he and Simon Furstenau were like, and the Greens were like, you know what? This is more important. Wilkinson, trained medical doctor, he knows the risks involved with COVID. This is more important than political gain. And, sure, I could harvest it for political gain and maybe be the premier at the end of it, but what does it matter if, 10,000 British Columbians have died and, what have I gained if I lose the whole world, right? So it was working. It was actually working. And John Horgan took a match and burned it all down. And now he cannot go out there and say, we're post-political, we're post-party, we're past these kind of petty games. Because the media were there too and know it was a lie. I gotta say, the BC Liberals on Twitter have been, some of their key folks have been noisy. Millibar, Polak, Shirley Bond, a little bit from Jazz. They've been putting stuff out there, Todd Stone. But by and large, the damage being done in the Twitterverse is being done by the mainstream media, who are fact-checking Horgan, as we've come to expect leaders to be fact-checked for the first time. And when Gary Mason of the Globe, easily my least favorite political columnist in Canada, and a man who loathes me, we had dust-ups over trans like he would, nonetheless, he retweeted me. And then I comment about, and he took a lot of crap from his followers, which I also thoroughly enjoyed. But, when Gary Mason is retweeting, when Martin Brown is delivering 4,000-word essays to the Georgia Strait, hatcheting John Horgan, going on CBC Radio in Victoria and calling John Horgan un-Canadian and un-British Columbian.
Yeah, wow.
If I went...
Those are strong words.
Yeah. I'm a pretty harsh critic of the Horgan government. If I said that, people would be like, oh, Jordan, going a little too far there. Geez, un-Canadian? Martin Brown, ardent Horgan supporter. So this has really changed. This will make Horgan more defensive. It'll make him more angry. We haven't even talked about the debacle in Maple Ridge, the car alarm, and
Yeah, and let's talk about that. But the one thing I do want to quickly grab onto is there was an incident this summer that kind of passed unnoticed. And I forget who the specific NDP MLA was, but they had said something to the effect of, the Liberals and the Greens have been playing politics, et cetera, and so forth, when it comes specifically to COVID, and that, this has been a problem. And no less than Adrian Dix, then Minister of Health, weighed in to say, no, I want to single out their health critics on each side, one of whom is Sonia First now, Norm Letnick for the BC Liberals, saying like they have been incredibly cooperative and even helpful behind the scenes, seeking no credit for themselves. And this is the kind of stuff we need. That is the kind of stuff. And you mentioned Katrina Chen tweeting about how great it is working with Sonia First now. Those things don't just go away. Nope. It makes it harder. Now, but yes, let's talk about...
Well, and Beau and Ma. Remember Beau and Ma sent out the fundraising letter? Can you imagine if Andrew Wilkinson was running the COVID response? And no less than her own party said, too far, shut up. And she had to apologize. Yeah, I can imagine Andrew Wilkinson running the COVID file. It would have looked exactly like it has looked the past 7 months. Dr. Bonnie's calling the shots. No politician was going to go against her on it.
I quite agree. I don't think it would have looked substantially different at all. It's been remarkable how governments across the country of very different political stripes have mostly ceded the floor to public health officials, and that is a good thing. Yeah. That should give you confidence in, speaking of being un-Canadian, that should give you confidence in the underlying political stability we have in this country.
Now, let's just play this out for one more second.
Yeah.
Here's the thought. So let's say the Greens or the BC Liberals win power this fall. In this election. I actually think that whoever the premier is will probably try to approach Adrian Dix, not to cross the floor, but Adrian, you've been so key to this COVID response and as the health minister. Please, can you work with my health minister? Can you get the, and you know what? I think Dix will do it. You can say a lot about Adrian Dix, in his previous political stuff, but he cares about this issue clearly, and he's invested 80, 90 hours a week into this for months. And, so I feel perfectly, when it comes to who would handle COVID better, I feel perfectly calm in all three parties, whether it's Dix, I don't like Horgan, but whether it's Dix or whether it's, Wilkinson or First, I feel like the response would be the same. Now, where economic recovery happens, I think there's one party that's miles ahead on that, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, your point is well taken, and I think you're right. And it's probably safe to assume that Adrian Dix is the front runner in his riding.
Yes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to be in the ledge.
Yeah, that seems likely. We kept hinting at yesterday. There was John Horgan had an avail at Maple Ridge, really close to where Andrew Wilkinson had an availability later in the day in Pitt Meadows. But I mean, I only listened in on the phone because that's how we do it in the media. But man, it was loud.
Beep, beep. So someone's car alarm was going off for the entire media avail, apparently.
And there were trucks backing up, and there was some heckling at the beginning, which it was kind of unintelligible, but you were aware it was happening. I mean, it wasn't great. I don't know what to say other than it was hugely distracting, and it became the story of the avail rather than what it was they were announcing.
Yeah, and I think I only heard one clip of it in the media because the beeping was so bad that it's virtually unusable for TV and radio. You can barely hear the premier over the beeping of this horn. So first of all, whoever that Maple Ridge resident was, well done. That is that when Rob and Richard sit down to write the Matter of Overconfidence, the John Horgan lost story, they'll put this thing in, and it's one of those classic, just some citizen out there decides to play a classic political dirty trick and it worked. If you don't, veteran political campaigners who love this kind of throwing wrenches into gears sort of thing are standing back going, okay, that's pretty good.
Well, and that's something I don't think we talked about in terms of having a campaign during a pandemic, which is that I hope all the events will be outside, rain or shine. That means by definition, we're talking about uncontrolled venues and more accessible by members of the public. So, I mean, this just hadn't occurred to me. I don't think in these terms anymore. I should, but I mean, all these events are going to be more susceptible to things like this.
No, exactly. So, rain. I mean, we're entering into rainy season. Hard to do an outdoor event right now. So yeah, it'll be a unique challenge. And again, I think it's one that doesn't favor John Horgan, who's probably the most retail of the three. It's the mechanics of this campaign have been rough for the NDP. The garbage cans in the shot at the launch. These weird phoning people videos that Horgan puts up, and then they cut away, and there just happens to be a camera in that other person's living room, and it's supposed to look spontaneous. Like, it could be kind of fun, like record him making some random calls to random undecideds and hope that you get someone who's like, oh my God, it's John Horgan, I can't believe it, I love what you do, you know Dr. Body, like that would be one thing. But these are like people who've appeared in NDP campaign ads. Like, it's weird.
And it's like you mentioned the garbage cans, and people are making fun of that. And I've heard people say, like, is it really that big a deal? I'm like, no, it's not that big a deal. But what it speaks to is, like, these are professional operatives. Mm-hmm. This is not high level stuff we're talking about. Like, of course, in the event when he is announcing we're having an election, you would probably have somebody looking at the background and considering what's going to be framing the leader of their party. And the fact that they just sort of shrugged or didn't notice the garbage cans it's perplexing. Again, these aren't stupid people. These aren't rookies. I genuinely don't understand. The commercials you point to, it's the same thing. They're so transparently staged.
Yeah.
And they kind of just look, I was going to say phony, which is probably too hard a word, but like, staged.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's being accomplished here?
Yeah.
It's, I as I say, like, I don't have I think they're doing this. I genuinely don't know. I am baffled.
It's almost like those commercials, it's almost like they have a checklist of things they have to hit. Okay, everyone in masks, check. Everyone racially diverse. Okay, I've got one Indo-Canadian. I've got one Chinese Canadian. I've got one, okay, check. Gender balance. Okay, I've got exactly 17 females, 17 males. Like, it just feels so manufactured. And, you've got a leader who prides himself as being like man of the people, right? Like, hey, who's the leader you want to have a beer with? Well, it's John Horgan. I mean, Andrew Wilkinson, he's a boring doctor lawyer. Who wants to talk to that guy? And Sonny Firstenow, she only cares about Shawnigan Lake. You want to have a beer with someone, John Horgan's your guy. Well, okay, but that's not the Horgan we're seeing in these things like John Horgan with his lacrosse stick. Like, oh, yeah, we know you like lacrosse. But at the same time, like, it doesn't really add any color. Like, it's weird. It's a weird thing. There's something off about this NDP campaign, and you almost wonder, like, it's still 29 days to the election, although it's really 15. It's really 15 days to the election because mail-in ballots and whatnot. But you just feel like something is off in that NDP planning room, and I wonder if it comes down to that original sin. We know we shouldn't be doing this. We know we don't have a good reason for doing this. And you almost accidentally, subconsciously self-sabotage.
Yeah, and again, it's worth pointing out, they're the only party that had a head start, right? Yeah. They knew this was coming. Yep. No one else did. If, we keep going back to her, but because she'd only been on the job for a week, if Sonia Firstenow's first avail was a little messed up, you'd say, well, I mean, they're flying by the seat of their pants.
Yeah.
Ditto the BC Liberals. I mean, they didn't know this was coming. I mean, they probably feared it, but they didn't know.
Yeah.
But the NDP, I mean, again, the garbage can shot. That should have been. They should have been planning that from, in August.
Yeah. No, exactly. You're exactly right. So we're on day 5 of the campaign. I think it's been a very good start if you don't like the NDP. Wilkinson has done what he needs to do, and he's been measured. He's been careful. Like, he can gaffe from time to time. Hasn't had any of those yet. That's a good start. He just needs to keep plugging away at this, and keep making sure that integrity and trust is the number one. Is that number one issue. And every time the other side comes out with a new platform, like the funny thing is, like, the NDP. They've never run a lot of campaigns where they're the incumbent, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they did in 75, but they were going down no matter what. They did in 96. In 96, they lost the popular vote there, but, through the Electoral College managed to win. Sorry. But, like, other than that, like, so they don't have a lot of practice. Now, some of the people from Alberta, the Notley campaign, they should have some knowledge of this. Manitoba has had NDP governments get reelected. So there is that kind of group thought, but I don't know. It's just funny, right? Because you have Jagmeet Singh, leader of the federal NDP, MP for Burnaby, also a member of the provincial NDP because, it's all one family. An NDPer is an NDPer is an NDPer. He props up the Trudeau government because he doesn't want to go to an election this fall because it's not safe for Canadians. In part. And then you got John Horgan saying, screw that, let's go. Like, hypocrisy.
And speaking of the Prime Minister, Trudeau did not do Horgan any favors by going on national TV and saying, yeah, there's no Thanksgiving this year, guys. Like, it's not safe. And maybe not Christmas. I mean, I think a lot of people feared that Trudeau was going to take national TV time to say, oh, by the way, we're also doing an election. He didn't do that. It was much more sobering. Like, the second wave is here.
Yeah.
Like, we need to be real about this. We need to admit this to ourselves. And there are some things that you're not going to like. And one of those is Thanksgiving. It's not a good idea. I mean, that was bitter in my mouth. I can tell you that. And for that to be in the same week that we're having an election here, that was by definition unnecessary is, it wasn't a favor, put it that way.
Does it put into doubt Dr. Bonnie's promise there will be Halloween? We will find out live 3 o'clock today at the press conference. I'm sure the media.
Well, I mean, we'll have Halloween. We just had this conversation with our kid. I mean, yes, we'll have Halloween. Your mom's making you a costume, and like we will go buy you candy, and we will make sure it's fun. But no, you're not trick or treating.
No.
Even if other families are, we're not doing that. Yeah. So
Thanksgiving, there is no way Canadians are going to sacrifice family gatherings on Thanksgiving, unless even like hardcore ones. Like, you're not going to get together with your sister and brother-in-law. Like, come on, of course you are. You're not going to have your parents. Like, but
I mean, it depends where they are. I don't have a sister or brother-in-law in Victoria. Right. I have that in Vancouver, and I don't think it's going to happen. To be honest, I really don't.
It's crazy.
I do have parents that live nearby, and we very well likely will see them, but we haven't seen them in an indoor setting since August, and I don't think we're going to. Which is sad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess we'll see. It'll be this second wave. Like, you're watching it crash over the whole world, and what I've come to the conclusion of is it didn't matter how you handled the first wave. Like, you did what you had to do to get through it from a hospital point of view. And BC, we locked down, and we like to pat ourselves on our back. I think you called it BC exceptionalism, but Israel's locked down again now. Sweden handled it a very different way from Finland and Denmark. They're all seeing big spikes in cases now. Various states handle it various ways. They all see second waves. It doesn't matter if you're a red state or a blue state. You're seeing second. Like, it's here. It's real.
And Quebec officially declared the second wave, and I mean the numbers there are frightening.
Yeah. Well, look, since he called the election on Monday, we've seen close to 400 new cases of COVID. And, you have a good day, I use that loosely, under 100 new cases, that's great. Next day, 160. Wow, okay. This is not going to be great. I also think there is an underlying issue here around schools, not as a vector, but as, what is the appropriate amount of information to give parents about what's happening in their schools? And I suspect that will be a continuing issue for Dr. Bonnie is, you've got Vancouver Coastal Health basically when operating on a whole different public education campaign than Fraser Health. Fraser Health, even within Fraser Health, Langley is not submitting the same kind of information that clearly Surrey is. There's like 17 schools in Surrey that have had COVID exposures. Not COVID happening in their school, but someone came into contact with them who has it. Apparently there's 0 in Langley. Well, that's not true. We know there's probably some in Langley. They're just not disclosing the same way.
No, what can you say? It's depressing talking about the second wave of COVID, but it's here, and I think it's also depressing talking about an election that we don't need to be having, and we're not being honest about the real reasons why. And that's we've been analyzing it on a professional level here, but I genuinely find it kind of disappointing and actually depressing. Like, we don't need to be doing this, and yet we are.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Anyway, Sunday afternoon football, big game, Seahawks, Cowboys. You can bet you'll see campaign ads there for both parties. I know the BC Liberals are planning a Sunday night football ad because they asked me for money to help put it on. Me personally, as one of thousands of BC Liberal members, not me, as ICBA money.
Like a fundraising email.
Yeah, get your quick peek at the ad we want to run now. If only we had $10,000 to do it. Okay, well, there you go. But I imagine you'll see a lot of ads on football this coming week, so be prepared.
Gives you some good insight into where they think the audience is, all three parties.
Yes. Well, I mean,
Sure.
what else? This is a problem, right? So media-wise, like, okay, so the media has been pretty negative on the NDP. Does it matter? Where are people getting their news right now? Is anyone actually watching television? I mean, for Pete's sake, I'm like now binging Deadwood. I started it last night because like I'm going back to shows from 15 years ago because we've run out of other things to watch. Like it's like, okay.
I mean, you make a good point. Maybe this was the calculation in the NDP is like, yeah, we are going to get the stuffing kicked out of us in the media, but who cares? I mean, as long as our voters turn up.
What is happening
We'll see.
in all of these? What is happening in all these little neighborhood Facebook groups? All these school neighborhood Facebook groups. That is the key to this election.
And will be, I think, from every election from here on out. That it'll be magnified in the pandemic, but I mean, I don't think this is like a new and radical departure from the way things are already going anyway. So yeah, you make a good point.
Yeah. All right.
Well, we'll be here again next week. Is it Tuesday we're going to aim for?
Yeah, or Monday. I don't know. You can
Either one.
do Monday,
There'll
Monday,
be
Friday.
There'll
Depends
be
what they
plenty
do
to
on the
talk-
week. Depends what they do on the weekend. If they do something really crazy on the weekend, then let's do Monday, and if not, we'll do Tuesday.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, we'll have a look. This might be the last sort of quasi-quiet weekend until the election's called. If only because the Greens and Liberals are still trying to get candidates.
One last thing. Any word on debates?
No, not yet. That was actually something we could have talked about. Was that it's always a good idea for the opposition to ask for more debates because they're playing offense. So that's the debates is the best opportunity to do that. We haven't heard. Horgan has mostly avoided the subject, which you would expect. So we'll see.
There's a consortium, though, right? Some of these press gallery guys, the big TV companies, they get together and talk about this, don't they? Is that how it works?
They do. And again, if I was, if I was in the physical press gallery,
You could
I would have a better insight. But I mean, I haven't physically seen these guys and women since March. So yeah, I'm a little out of the loop, I'm afraid. Okay. But I'm hopeful those discussions are happening. The other thing is, of course, the consortium didn't know this election was happening either, right? So they're also working from behind.
Yeah, good point. Good point. All right.
Yeah.
Just wondering. If you hear anything, let me know.
Well, we will keep you posted. I will let you know, and of course, we'll let our dear viewers and listeners know. And speaking of viewers and listeners, you can catch our podcast on all of your favorite platforms, everything from Google Play to Spotify to iTunes and others that the kids know that I don't. Or, of course, on YouTube on the mothership at theorchid.ca. Until then, I'm Maclean K. That's Jordan Bateman. Happy politics.